So for those of you who aren't familiar with Vicharamanthan, comes from the Sanskrit for churning ideas. So VM is a platform for discussing earnest ideas which are rooted in classical Hindu civilization and how they might be applied to modern British society. So when I say Hindu, I don't mean religious, but the cultural force that's existed for thousands of years. VM's been running in England for 4 years now, and in that time we've explored, debated and argued lots of different topics such as education, capitalism, identity and many, many others. We've had authors and journalists, philosophers and politicians come onto our platform and speak. VM's run by the kind volunteers and well-wishers who help us to maintain so effectively. If you want to find out more about being a well-wisher, you can speak to Nikhil at the end, who will just be outside. So tonight we're asking ourselves a question that's fueled so many discussions throughout time. And in the lead up to this event, I've been asking friends and family and colleagues what it means to them to be fulfilled. So before we start tonight, I want to ask the same question to all of you. What does it mean to you to be fulfilled? Please feel free to shout out.
Priya?
Yes?
Would be fulfilling for me if I was looking at the audience and not the desk.
Give it to me.
There we go.
That's better for me.
Okay, great.
Okay, now see there's...
So, what makes people feel fulfilled?
Success.
Success?
Happiness.
Happiness? Anything else? What makes you feel fulfilled? Money, yeah. So when I've been asking these questions to friends and family, there's been recurring themes that have been coming up, such as new experiences, new challenges, success, finding happiness, surrounding yourself by the people that you love. Tonight we're going to be looking at the Hindu perspective of those aims, and we're looking at how Dharma fits into that. But what is Dharma, and how does Dharma interplay with our individual needs, our accomplishments, our relationships, power, sex, money? How does Dharma help us navigate through our lives and towards the happiness that we all strive for? So to kick things off tonight, Kiranji will be defining Dharma for tonight's discussion so that we can introduce the topic for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And then we'll be going on to hear from the speakers. At this point, I want to make it really clear that there's no right answer. The topic that we're looking at is very big and very personal, and the aim of tonight is to get you thinking about what the most appropriate position is for you as an individual. I hope that you'll take tonight as a springboard from which you can find your own path towards fulfillment. We have an expert panel that will be joining us, so Jeffrey Armstrong, who's stepping in from Bali, Dr. Stephen Cross, and Dr. Ram Vaidya. The format of tonight will be as follows. So Jeffrey Armstrong will begin with 15 minutes, and then we'll have a brief Q&A session with him. He's in Bali at the moment, so it's the early hours of the morning for him. So we'll let him log off after that Q&A session with him. Then we'll hear from Dr. Stephen Cross and Dr. Ram Vaidya, and then after that we'll have a Q&A session. So the speakers will give an introduction to different aspects of fulfillment in the time that they have, and then we'll really be able to dig deeper during the Q&A session where you can ask lots of probing questions. If you want to continue the discussion online, our Twitter handle for tonight is @vichar_manthan. Can you all make sure that your phones are on silent? And the event is being recorded, and it's hoped that a podcast will be made available online. So, to start things off, please, would you like to introduce to us?
Namaste, everybody. All of us strive for happiness, but do we meet with success? Can it be argued that to lead a truly happy life, one must be fulfilled? What does it mean to lead a fulfilled life? I'm sure everybody here has their own criteria for fulfillment and motivations for achieving it. But we are here to explore an essential question that philosophies and faiths have attempted to answer. What ought to drive a human being in order to lead to ultimate fulfillment? You'll be pleased to know that I'm not offering you an answer, but we are going to explore the answer from a Hindu perspective, as laid out in Indian texts, with the help of our speakers today. I would like to open the debate with some remarks to set the scene for the discussion, or rather the churning of ideas. The word we ought to remember is dharma, the one word that seeks to encompass the answer in Hindu systems of philosophy. The definition of dharma I'm going to propose to you is the one that is given in the Mahabharata shortly after the Bhagavad Gita Parva. The Mahabharata is an essential text of India and considered one of the Prasthanatraya, or the fundamental three texts, the other being the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. Dharma is described thus: whatever that takes you closer inwards towards experience and awareness, rather than to the outwardly world enjoyed through the senses. The classical texts talk of the four goals of life, the Purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma occupies the first place. Pravritti dharma and nivritti dharma, dharma for action and dharma for transcendence. The Bhagavad Gita talks about the dharma of various beings. For example, a soldier's being to fight and a teacher's to teach. We go back to our question: what ought to drive a human being to lead a fulfilled life? Can it be further argued that to lead to fulfillment, one should follow an ethical life? Is there a difference between a flourishing life and an ethical life? Ramakrishna, the 19th century mystic, remarked that India has a cap to fit anybody, but unfortunately, others established philosophies that seem to want to crop one's hair to fit one to their one-dimensional view. With at least 14 systems of philosophy, theism and atheism, the ancient Hindus certainly had a lot to offer. These include Sankhya, Sankhya Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purva, and Uttara Mimamsa, among others. From what I can see, the VM team has got together a good selection of speakers today. Dr. Cross is familiar with all aspects of Hinduism, a perennial philosopher with a deep understanding of Eastern and Western thought. Jeffrey Armstrong is a modern exponent of yoga and its universal spiritual values. Trained in the Sankhya school of philosophy and the Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta school, Dr. Vaidya is dedicated to the yoga of service. A very warm welcome to the speakers.
Thank you. So now I'd like to fully introduce Jeffrey Armstrong before he does his speech. So Jeffrey Armstrong is an award-winning poet and best-selling author of numerous books, including Spiritual Teachings of the Avatar, Ancient Wisdom for a New World. Mr. Armstrong has been a philosopher, practitioner and teacher of the Vedas for 40 years. Prior to his teachings, he spent 5 years in an ashram as a brahmacharya. For 15 years, he was a corporate executive in Silicon Valley and a speaker for Fortune 500 companies, and was written about regularly in reputable media outlets such as the Wall Street Journal. This experience puts Jeffrey in a favourable position to explore the differences between Hindu Dharma and any other comparative notions in Western traditions, which I'll outline for us now. Mr. Armstrong?
Namaste, and to everyone in the room, pranams. I always begin Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva, Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat, Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All of us who benefited from the rishis and gurus of Bharat, of India, are grateful and try to act as representatives of their vision. Coming in from the outside, and all of you coming in from the inside, we're meeting at just the right place. As this knowledge has been passed forward over time, one of the things that's always struck me about this particular attempt is that Sanskrit language has been studying this process as a particular group of knowledge and information has been passed forward through time. If you think about it, that's one of the most difficult things to do. One of the ironies, I think, of the modern world is that supposedly primitive culture of India, once freed from British rule, quickly took over IT and took command of the world of technology. And the first thing they did was convert everyone to Hindus by putting idols, that is to say, icons, on their desktop. So now, informally, everyone's a Hindu because they all worship idols or icons on their desktop. And you know what I'm saying is true because everyone has a mouse and Ganesha rides a mouse. So here you have it. Now, my point here is that the readiness to work with technology isn't something you would expect from an ancient culture that supposedly mired in the past. But it is not the case. But rather it is that Sanskrit is the mother language, as the British found out when they went to India, of all the modern languages. And this is a very important place to start the conversation, so that we know that our very speaking of this is in the context of a language that is so perfect that it will end up being the ultimate computer programming language as well. NASA's toyed with it, but it takes too long right now to create programmers. So if you think for a moment that Sanskrit is traveling over time and carrying some messages that were considered important enough that we as human beings need to hear them, and the differences in our perception are steadied by the steadiness of this signal coming forward. So coming in from the outside, the first thing that one has is an experience and the ability to identify the message as something that's steadily being broadcast over time. So this has been one of the remarkable things for me, to steady this and find this and realize that this is so. Then, within the context of that vocabulary, we can go forward with the conversation. Are we going to proceed with Q&A, Ria? Or am I doing an introduction for a certain period of time?
Oh, sorry. Would you be able to talk about Hindu Dharma and how that stands up against the comparative notions in the West? So how Dharma fits into my fulfillment, and is there any Western comparisons?
All right. So the other component of this, then, aside from the steadying effect of the Sanskrit, is that coming in from the English-speaking world, this conversation has been passing through the Greek culture, the Latin culture, the Romance languages, the Germanic languages, and all of this has been coming forward. So this signal is in the context of another thing that's very important for us to remember, and that is that the yuga cycle of concept of time is billions of years. One of my favorite videos is of Carl Sagan walking in a Shiva temple in India amidst Shiva lingas, and he says, only ancient India and modern science calculate the age of the universe in billions of years. And then he says, but India must have done it by coincidence. The fact of the matter is it's trillions of years, and it was not a coincidence, it's a measurement, it's a calculation. And so this concept of time and the concept of language through time is parallel with one more idea that's important for us, comparing this way of thinking to the modern religions and philosophies. And that is that we are all immortal beings who are outside of time. And we are visiting a realm that is based on time. This notion, which precedes Einstein and all concepts of relativity, the relativity of the Vedic culture is rooted in each of us being an immortal being. And so the place of comparison for one who, as I was born a Christian, I was not told that I was an immortal being. I was told that I had one lifetime, and that immortality might be granted me, or I might be sent to an endless barbecue where I was one of the things being roasted. And that I had only one lifetime in which to sort that out. So think of the fear, the terror, and the abject ignorance that surrounds the idea that you have only one chance to understand all of this and everyone starts out from a dissimilar position. So to steady the conversation, one coming from outside would notice right away that in the Vedic way of looking at things, each one of us is a timeless being traveling through time with multiple opportunities to continue learning about ourselves and the entire program. This vision is the beginning vision that is now spreading throughout the world via yoga. Even though yoga appears to be about asana and rooted just in the physical body, everyone practicing yoga is now also learning this idea that we don't just have one lifetime, we have many. And that many lifetime idea needs to be seen, in my opinion, as the root of the Vedic culture, because it's a conception of us as all moving as a group through time, having this experience. So this is a starting point of conversation between the so-called religions of the world and the Dharma coming forward from Bharat, from India. And the translation of Dharma that I use is based on the root dri, which means the essential nature of a thing, which if you take it away, it is no longer itself. Therefore, the conversation begins with a way of looking at ourselves and the entire experience of life as ourselves being timeless, immortal beings. So the way this is translated for me is that the universe is a university. This is the Vedic view. The universe is not just a cosmos. It is, in fact, a university in which all of the living entities are students. This is a worldview that allows the diversity that sometimes creates confusion for people, which would be, why are there so many viewpoints? Well, there are so many viewpoints because it's K through PhD. Because you start out in kindergarten and start learning, and as you progress, you go through a curriculum of understanding from life to life. This view is the only view that allows for the diversity of opinion and growth, which has now popularly come to be known in the following statement: when there are two Hindus together, there are three philosophies. The reason is because diversity of opinion is how you learn in a university environment. And in a university environment, we don't get weapons. We don't weaponize the classroom and try to kill each other because we're learning and have differences of opinion. So this diversity with a steadying language and a concept of time that is in trillions of years, seeing the entire process in context of an immortal realm. Yes?
Sorry about the tech issues, Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah.
So I was just about to say, the question that I wanted to ask for you is, if we have this infinite amount of time and if we are timeless beings, then what would motivate me to strive for fulfillment in this life? Why should I work towards wanting to be fulfilled in this life?
Well, why should you not, rather, would be the question. The point of the question is, how can we all go towards some kind of, some notion of fulfillment? And so for that, we have to contextualize it, that we're in a university. The question then you ask is, should one try to do anything at the university? The answer is, of course, because we're here. But the real question is, how can we be reasonable with one another? And the reasonableness of the culture of India is it never left its own borders with an army and tried to force everyone else to do what they wanted, or burned libraries, or destroyed temples, or raped and pillaged. So, as students, we should behave well. Along with having this great context, we should see each other in a certain way. So what is that? It's not me, but you. I'm surprised that most people don't ever explain namaste, but I've never heard anyone, if I may say, from India describe what namaste really is, and often not even to their own children. It's not me, but you, isn't it? Grammatically, na-ma-te, not me, you. What is the you that I'm pointing to? So if the namaste culture spreads around the planet, then we will universalize the conversation rather than make it into city-state warfare with my group asserting itself over yours, as if we alone are right. So the real problem that the Vedic Hindu culture wants to solve first is politely to bring everyone to understand that we're not supposed to kill each other in trying to find a solution to this question. We're supposed to find a way to live together. So really it begins with sustainability of the campus, sustainability of the planet, and a way of living with one another that doesn't cause so much chaos. And the entire civilization of Bharat has tried to be a beacon of this. But in what context? And now we come to the epics. So the epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana are the stories that lead us into the next conversation that you're asking, which is what happens when you meet with resistance? To what? To peacefully being in the universal. Well, then you have to define what behaviors are acceptable and not acceptable. You know, my favorite in this is the concept of the caste system, which ironically, the British accused India of. But, excuse me, but properly speaking, where did your mommy and daddy go to school? And so it is, the caste system is simply a Portuguese word for when you pass wealth and power on to your children by inheritance. Now, where in the world does that not go on? So, where is there not a caste system? Meaning, where do people not have a self-interest and pass that on as best they can to those that they love? So the question isn't, will that happen? The question is, how will that happen? How will we organize life so that we can cooperate? So it's this notion of a cooperative society that moves us to the next point, which is missing in the Abrahamic religions. It is the categories of life studied scientifically. The other surprising thing to those of us who come to the Vedic Dharma is that most people in the Vedic culture don't talk anymore about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. They don't talk about earth, water, fire, air, space, manas, buddhi, and then talk about the particular vehicle that the person they're talking to is in, as if your body is a vehicle, and how to describe that in terms of the body types. Because this is the universal basis of explaining each other physically. If you go to China, if you go to any other culture, and you're from the Vedic culture, you simply explain that everyone has a body made of earth and water and fire and air and space and a manas and a buddhi. So these are called the categories of science. The categories of science are the basis of the Vedic culture, and it's one of the ways we stabilize the technology of universal communication. And this is being revived along with yoga. So in the time that India was colonized, the clarity of understanding of these categories of the elements and the categories of our vehicle, which gives rise to the so-called varnas. The way we work in the world comes from the kind of vehicle we're driving. If your vehicle is a sports car, then you're Vata. If your vehicle is a race car, then you're Pitta. And if your vehicle is a heavy-duty vehicle, then you're a Kapha. This may sound simplistic, but this is the basis of the Vedic culture, that everyone is in a vehicle for this lifetime. And that vehicle determines what's known as our sva dharma. It determines how we will interact with the rest of the world. So we are not the vehicle. We are driving the vehicle, the karana. The word car comes from karana. Isn't it ironic that Arjuna and Krishna were driving in a car? Metaphorically, from the Chandogya Upanishad, the vehicle in which we're driving, pulled by the horses of our senses, and now our world is choked with cars. Perhaps it's all India's fault.
I'm going to round you up there, Mr. Armstrong. I'd love to ask you more questions on that, but we are going to move on to our next speaker. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us, and I'll let you go off to sleep now.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.